So if the
Right.
kids are playing in a certain spot, what's interesting about that spot? Go over there and settle your breathing. Breathe out, I say. It's not about breathing in, it's about breathing out. We're all holding our breath, waiting for some bloody thing to happen. Breathe out when you can really breathe out. And then breathe in that space and get centered with it and feel it for its energy. But take your shoes and socks off. Don't stand on an ant's nest or a thistle or something.
Welcome to the House of JerMar podcast, where wellness starts within. The House of JerMar is a lifestyle brand empowering women to live all in interior design and personal wellness. We are a destination for women ready to reimagine what is possible in their homes and lives and then create it. We are honored to have you join us on our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. I am your host, Jean Collins, and I invite you to become inspired by this week's guest. Welcome to the House of JerMar podcast, where wellness starts within. I'm your host, Jean Collins. Today's guest is so special to me. It's Adrian Ramsay. Adrian is a multi-award-winning interior designer, but yet he is so much more than that. He is so humble with his bio, and he is a TV star. He has a podcast called Talk Design, which I've been honored to be a guest on. And Adrian is just not only an incredibly talented designer, but just an amazing person with amazing energy. And he is living a life where wellness really starts within. So I look forward to sharing him with you. Be sure to listen towards the end where he talks about landscape whispering, which is so fascinating, and emotional floor plan. So please welcome Adrian Ramsay to the House of JerMar podcast. So Adrian, I am so excited to have you from the other part of the country. It is like 6:30 in the morning there, and I thank you so much for getting up early to have coffee with me and for us to chat. So welcome to the House of JerMar podcast.
I am so excited to be here. It is an absolute honor. And I'm on water instead of coffee. Oh,
Really?
never mind. Yeah, well, only because I didn't have time to make it because I was trying to get my ass out of bed.
Oh, you should have told me. I would have given you the extra 10
Oh,
minutes
no,
to go get a coffee,
but don't give me any more than I need.
Yeah. Oh, my
Uh.
goodness. So as I'm going to say in the intro, your bio, which is included in the notes, is so humble. And you just
Should
have that
be.
you're like a multi-award-winning designer. You connect with clients. It's so sweet, so fabulous, but so humble because you are amazing. You do so much. You are my most famous guest right now. You are on television. You have a talk show. You have a podcast. You have like 186 episodes already out on your podcast with probably 100 more recorded. So
Yeah.
you are an incredible person. And just to tell the audience before I stop talking and let this be all about you, I met you because I got to be fortunate enough to be a guest on your podcast, Talk Design. And you might not remember this. We spoke for 3.5 hours.
I do.
And it was nighttime for me. And so we're reversed. It's at the end of the day for me and first thing in the morning for you. But it was even later for me. And I was supposed to go out to dinner. We talked right through my dinner. It was so great.
Didn't stand somebody up.
Great. It was fine. It's no big deal. But you and I connected on so many levels. And I have this podcast to really talk about wellness within. And to me, that is your interiors and your designs. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about how incredible you are with that, but also about your personal wellness. And you were one of the first designers that I met that really talked my language. You understand energy, the universe, creating things, attracting people. And you're one of the first designers that I'd met that spoke the way I speak. And it was so enlightening. So I'm going to be quiet now. And I'm going to let you tell my audience about you and what you do. And how did you even get to be doing what you're doing? Because you are an absolute rock star. And we'll talk about your Stetson hat in a moment. Because before we started this, we talked about how great that Stetson hat is. And I need one.
We love Stetson. I just would see opportunity. I'd lean into it. Like, I'd see opportunity that I could do. I think that's the bigger thing. I'm dyslexic and I'm ADHD. I've used as a power in my life as opposed to taking it away. I certainly didn't when I was younger. When I was younger, I wouldn't take responsibility for it. As I got older, I kind of went, well, there's only a few things that I can do. I'm not that good at a lot of other things. We were talking about music before we started recording. I don't do music. Can't make music. I can't sing. I have been booed off stages because I thought I could sing. or the alcohol thought I could.
Ah.
But yeah, we've all been there, I'm sure. One of the things with that is I realized that I could draw, I could use design thinking, and my ADHD gave me this energy that I could probably outwork people a lot. So I could put time in that they wouldn't, just that heightened energy. As a child, I couldn't sit still. Like I would be always tapping, wriggling my legs or whatever. My parents would be, could you stop that? Could you stop that? Could you stop that? Well, no, I can't actually. But yeah, could you stop that? Could you stop that? Because it would be so annoying. It's one of those tough things. ADHD is all sort of fashionable right now. I call it a superpower, but like how we have allergies, because of our food industry, and we'll get to this, but because of our food industry, because of the amount of processed foods, we have a heightened level of allergies and allergens that people are allergic to. With that, right now, it's like, what do you do with ADHD? It's all over everything. It's like this new, oh shit, we'll catch that piece of the community who have ADHD and we'll be able to help them. Well, you won't, because they still can't focus. That's not going to help them. You can catch them, but you can't usually get them to focus still. That side of it, I kind of narrowed down and I went, things I can do. So things that I can do is I can use the dyslexia, because dyslexia makes me see the world differently. So 1 in 10 people are dyslexic. So I see the world differently from most other people. That gives me one other advantage on them, is that I am seeing it and they are seeing it with a different lens, and in that they have to catch up with where I see it. And then otherwise it's like a scrambled egg in my head, or a big jigsaw puzzle that has never been put together. So my head does this thing where I can jump in these long lateral movements in all directions at once. Like my wife says to me, would you just stay on the subject? I say, I am on the subject. Because of that thing, I can link all these things.
Right.
It's an amazing networking skill. I go, oh, when somebody tells me about something, your mind, dyslexia isn't just vision. It's a mental thing of how it reconnects as well. So my mind's doing this. So anyway, I worked out I could draw. I had a vision for how things could be, and I could articulate it, but the drawing of it was really important. So those two things, I could tell the story and draw it.
Right.
So I wasn't left with a lot of other opportunities in the world. I don't know what jobs do that. So I ended up, from school, I worked in film and television production for a few years, and then I ended up being a ski bum and working restaurants and stuff like that. Whereas restaurants was a really interesting one because it honed my skill to build rapport with people. Right. And that being able to meet people at a table, build rapport with them. If there was something that I could sell that meant that I got something extra, I would sell it. Like that's how I got my dinners. So at a lot of restaurants, they would say, whoever sells the most of, get this. One example was there was a restaurant I worked in, they had prime rib, and the end cut of a prime rib is kind of like the dryer.
Okay.
And so every night that they had the prime rib, I would sell the most prime rib. Every night of it. And I would set up a competition with somebody else in the team as well, just so I could beat somebody. I think it was just an egotistical piece of shit. I would do that. And then I would barter off my piece of prime rib if I didn't want to eat it. I'd barter it off, or I would sell it to a customer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I'd say to a customer, you know what? There's no prime rib left except for an end. And they'd be like, really? And I go, yeah, would you eat an end cut? And they'll go, yeah, hell yeah. Because the end cut's kind of even though it's a bit drier, it's got all the way it was cooked, it's all juicy. It's not just two beautiful pink sides. I would say, yeah, look, okay, cool. I'll give you the end cut. And of course you get a bigger tip for that. It's still, the restaurant made money out of it, but it became my little competition. I built rapport with people really quickly, which was a trick I learned from working in restaurants and then working in ski fields and stuff like that. Then when it came to design, I took off and down the clothing route. Because my mother wouldn't buy me clothes when I was a kid, that makes it sound really bad. She wasn't a bad human. I would ask, like most kids would ask for things, and she'd say, you could make a pair of jeans. And I'm like, really?
Yeah,
and she's
like,
like,
that's not the same.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not
And
the
she's,
label that's on the jeans that I want.
yeah. So then
Mm-hmm.
I was in a real conundrum. She said, I'll buy you the fabric. So I'm like, okay. So my only way to get a pair of jeans was to make them.
A manly skill. You're building up your
Make a pair of
manliness.
jeans. Yeah.
Make a pair of jeans.
Levi Strauss did it. So I did. I made them. But so then because I didn't have a label, and label branding wasn't probably quite as big a thing, but because I didn't have a label for them, I used to sew a patch of leather on the back all the same. But what I realized is that because I had my own, let's say, daggy homemade jean, what I had the advantage of is I could change how they were. So I would make them with, flares that would cover my whole shoes. I'd make them, I changed it. I had maybe, I don't know, 3 pairs of jeans as a kid. When I say kid, like early teen, I'd have all these different jeans. I would do crazy things with them. And that was kind of my entree into becoming a clothes designer. I went to look for an apprenticeship as a tailor, of all things, because there was no other way that you could learn clothes design. And I couldn't
Right.
find one. And so then I'm like, yeah, okay. Because that whole industry was dying terribly. And so I went, what else can I do? So then I've talked my way into a job based off my home dressmaking skills. My first business was when I was at school, I used to make formal pants for boys.
Yeah.
Because they were all, adolescents, all too skinny, too tall. Pants didn't come long enough. If they did, the waist was like huge. So I used to do that, and I'd say, give me your favorite pair of jeans, and I'd go home, I'd make a pattern off their jeans without cutting their jeans up or damaging them. And then I would make them a pair of black formal pants for school, which they were allowed to wear all winter long. And this is in New Zealand, so it's bloody cold. And so that was my first business, and I'd sell them a pair of pants that fitted like their jeans.
It's amazing.
Hey, you were saying humble before. I'm not that humble. Really what it is, everything was kind of done out of wanting to survive and then wanting to thrive in a world that wasn't set up for me. So if you're dyslexic, the world's not set up for you. It's like being left-handed. I'm not left-handed, but it's not set up for you. You're a designer. How often do we find a left-handed? Nothing.
Ever.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. I think they make scissors for them. If you've ever tried to use a pair of scissors in the wrong hand, you'll see why they had to make scissors for them. But otherwise, they're the adapters, not us. So mine was always this thing of how am I going to do something well? And I had these 2 skills. One is I could use my ADHD, which meant I had this energy and drive and push and all the rest. And then I had the design ability to use the analytics to think. So how could those 2 skills come together? Ultimately, it ended up coming together in the clothing industry. Anybody who's in the clothing industry, the difference between being, say, a designer and being a design director for a company is that you understand that the amount of floor space you control in every shop is the value of the company you're working for. So if you're a brand, the more shelf space, the more floor space, and the other brands around you are the key items that grow that business's revenue.
Sure.
Maintaining that. So once you get that in your head, now you're working as a business person as opposed to as a designer. How do you maintain keeping that amount of floor space or shelf space season on season on season and growing it so that you've become a major part of their revenue? Their store is reliant on you now, but because you're actually looking at how many square meters or square feet of space you control. So that switch in your head, when that switch goes off, you actually become super valuable because you're actually diving into your customers. And take this for what we do with design. You're diving into your customer's need and you've got empathy for what their needs are. And then you're taking the knowledge you have and applying it to that to make sure that they've got the right items. Not just the right items, that they've got the ability to sell something from this price level to this price level. The same as we do in design. Like if you're in, whether it's a house that you're designing, I design a lot of houses. And then if you're doing interiors is a great example of throwing in a whole bunch of cheaper items that are against more expensive items, and people in the decor side of it, and people
Right.
don't realize that you've done that to get to a budget. In the house and the design of a structure, you do similar things. You throw in items that are cheaper to get out to our floor size or whatever it's going to be. So I learned all those skills along the way doing that with really no formal education. And so I don't know that it's amazing that I got this far. They haven't found me out yet or caught me. I better be careful where I tell the story.
Remember, we're here to inspire. So it's like anything's possible, folks. Anything is possible. Don't give up on yourself yet.
Yeah, exactly. Don't ever give up on yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, trust me, nobody else does. I often have a little laugh. We were saying just about Stetson. So I'm going to just put this in here. This hat I'm wearing is a Stetson open road. That's the style. It's a tight brim, slightly short crown. One of my favorite hats. And Stetson put in their marketing line, they put worn by artists, presidents, and outlaws. And so
you're like, okay, so I'm two of the three.
That's it. You've got it. Like, I haven't been caught yet, so I'm definitely in the outlaw piece.
Right.
And I pose as an artist. So it's kind of this catch-22. I kind of flip between those two genres as my game, as my sort of like, I'm posing as an artist, but I'm acting as an outlaw because they haven't caught me. Right. They haven't found me out. For a long time, I was really scared of being found out. So you'd try.
I would think so. Yeah, imposter syndrome, right? Yeah, like you're not really worthy of doing what you do. You're not really good.
That's it. Yeah. And that was a big driver for me to surround myself with people that were always better than me at what they did. They'd be more qualified, they'd be more inept at it. And my podcast came out of that. And I'm the only guy who isn't the architect in the room. I don't have an architectural degree. So I'm the one who didn't study architecture. I'm not about to go and study it. How do I go and put myself around better and better minds? So the first thing I did is I started going to architectural conferences and getting myself an invite. And then that put me, instead of being around the building designer community, it put me around the architectural community. The easiest way to engage people is to give them something. The first people were just hugely generous, but I started my podcast and the opportunity was, would you come on my podcast and talk to me about design? And they were like, oh yeah, sure. Architects are reasonably low-hanging fruit when it comes to this kind of like genre.
Their name is always last. Their name is not first on the list of references and resources. They're definitely pretty low.
They're not. Yeah, they are. And yet, if you consider within the wellness side of it, they determine the flow of everything that we are in. A designer of some sort does. For architects, supposedly, the most highly trained people that can determine the flow of a space, how the light and air will come in, how it will be sited on a site, how it will be thought through. And then there's the egotistical ones, and then there's the ones who are with less ego, the empathetic ones. Interior design has a different genre to it. It's taking usually something that's already built, or if not already built, about to be built. The architect or the designer has kind of pushed that into a form and shape, and then it's manipulating that to get better flow normally. And then also when we decorate this, when we add these other points to it, how will it react? What will we have in this space? How will the people live in this space? And a lot of architects don't think about how the people are going to actually fully function in the space, but they think about how to be filled with light and air. In it, you kind of have this thing. So I'm like, okay, how do I get around more of these people that know what they're talking about? Started a podcast, reached out to people, got some people happening. And I think when I released the first podcast, I had 12, was somewhere around there, 10 or 12, that I'd already recorded. And so I knew I had time to practice and catch up. I kind of
Yeah.
had a couple of months worth. And then from that, I was like, okay, cool, I've got this. Refined my systems a little, changed the things around, and then went, okay, here we go, and started reaching a bit further. But I would ask the last best person if they would give me who they would like to hear on my podcast, and could they introduce me?
Which is
So I
you're
just
such a good
networked my
business
way.
person. It's great.
Well, it was
But
running,
you're
my
such
list
a
was
good
getting
business person.
smaller. When your list gets
Desperation.
small,
You got creative.
there you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just went, who would that be? And I got a big shout out to people like Michael Malone from Dallas, Texas. Michael is one of the most generous and beautiful architect, but generous humans. And I said to Michael, Michael, I've met him at conferences and stuff. I said, I'd love you to come on the podcast, which he did. And then I went back to him a little while later and said, Michael, I'm going to see him at this conference. And I said, when we catch up, I'd love if you could give me a few people that I could interview. He sent me through like 18 people, that I haven't even interviewed them all yet.
That's like 4 months worth of content, at least 5 almost.
Yeah. And there's from architects to specialists in certain areas. They're just people that he loves what they do.
Yeah.
And I'm still working through that list. It's incredible. He hooked me up with them. I did the same with a photographer in New Zealand, a guy called Simon Devitt. Amazing architectural photographer. I said to Simon, because I'm a Kiwi and I haven't interviewed a lot of New Zealand, I said, I'm going to do a series on New Zealand architects, man. I said, but I want to do it in collaboration with you. Who would you hook me up with? So I've got like a list on the wall here, which is 3 pages long, that we haven't released one of those yet. We haven't released any yet. I've got a whole bunch of them. And with those, they're sitting like I call it in the hopper. They're sitting in the hopper. And then Simon will be interviewed separately from them about the house and about them. And then that'll be tagged into the podcast. But again, it was like, how do I grow that? And how do I grow it with a voice that's really worth having? So it's this sort of like, I'm just running just ahead of the train before it runs me over. And it's a fascinating, fun journey to do it.
So what made you decide I want to do a podcast?
How do I elevate the people I talk to that I can learn from? I said before, right at the very start of it, that's what you give people. By giving them something that was good for their marketing and media and a place to have a voice, they in turn gave me their knowledge, and I could ask them pretty much any question I want about design, and they will, because they're architects and nobody gives a rat's about them, they will pour their heart out with it as to why it matters. And they are deep thinkers and empathetic thinkers, and they care about so much of the process, and they will do that. And then I learn from it. Jeffrey Dungan is one of my early podcasts, amazing architect. I've been in business for years as a designer when I spoke to Jeffrey, and I was sitting right where I'm sitting now. And I said to him something about, so Jeffrey, you must have amazing projects or great projects or something like that. And he said to me, yeah, I do. He said, but it's not about that. And then my ears pricked up. Like at that point, I'm like, oh, okay. I thought that's what we were in this industry for, is to do these amazing projects. And he said, what I've found is more important is great people, because with great people come great projects. And when he said that, it was like the light bulb. It was like being slapped on the side of the head with a big hunk of lumber and going, boom, I woke up and went, that's the last time I'm looking for a great project, looking for work with great people. And that was early on in the podcasting, but it changed my perception of everything that I did right in that moment. It was, if the people aren't going to be wonderful, and if we're not going to have a great match, don't do it for the money. Do it for the outcome that you're going to get the joy out of along the way. And then the stress in your business shifts again. Business changes every day. It's always going to be stressful. It's always going to have unknowns. And if you embrace those unknowns and put yourself in communities where you can get help, because a lot of design solopreneurs as well, or small businesses, if they're not in a community where they're getting help and support, then they're really flying alone So put yourself into a community where you get help and support. And a podcast does that. It builds you another community, and it builds you a global community. That's how we're talking.
Exactly. No, it's true. And you talk to people all over the country, all over the world. I listen to your podcast all the time, and you have guests from all over. When did TV come into play?
Oh, again, funny story, like just one of those weird stories. I've got a funny little piece about it, actually. I got rung up by a TV producer, and they said, oh, we've been looking on your website, and we're making a TV show called Australia's Best House, and it's hosted by Megan Gale, and Megan Gale is a supermodel from Australia, became very famous in Italy and stuff. Are you sure you've got the right number? I'm like, seriously, I was. I'm like, and they said,
Have
yeah,
you
yeah,
seen
no.
me? Do you know?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Seen me? Even with my hat, have you seen me?
do you know that I'm not sure whether I'm in the artist or the outlaw moment at this time? Is the next phone call going to be the people who find me out? And I said, I don't think I've got a project that's worthy of that. And they said, we do. We really love this project and this project that you have. And I'm like, oh, okay. I said, well, I've got this other project I'm working on. It's a big project. It was around a $4 million build. So it was in the very serious category. And that was a pre-COVID build. So that house now would be maybe 6.5 million to build. If it was 4 then, it would be easy 6.5 now because of our COVID escalation and cost. And I went, it should be finished. When's your latest shooting date? So they gave me that. And then, so we shot it for the show. And in fact, that picture behind me, the big white stripe through it, that's actually part of that house.
Cool.
So that's the entrance point. The reason, I don't know what people can see there, it's got a big white line through it from a light, but these big walls that are freestanding walls with the holes cut in them, they're supporting a pool that you're walking underneath as you go into the entrance. So it's a 3-story house, so the pool's the next level up, and then you get into it on the level of.
So cool.
Yeah. And just the opportunity to design something like that is super exciting and super cool, like really cool. And so with it, I knew that house was going to be really close to being, can we wait for it? Can we get it to there? And so we put that house on that show, and that show is actually a competition. And with it being a competition, we didn't win. And I'm like, I don't like to do things that I don't win at because, I expect to, I suppose. There's the non-humble part of me. I do it because I expect to win. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't win. Anyway, it was a great experience doing. It was really fun. It was wasn't my first foray into being on television, but it was like 4 minutes of being on television. They came back to me and said, would I put a house in the following season of the show? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I've got another one, which is a really interesting house. And it was a renovation, and around $1 million renovation. So still, we're talking substantial money. So I put this other house in, and it was finished. And with that, they filmed it, and then it was meant to be released onto television somewhere around the third quarter of last year. So that would have been around October, November. And for whatever reason, it's on network television. So the network chooses when they drop these programs into their programming. And it didn't get released, and it didn't get released, and it didn't get released. And then when we can talk about that spiritual side of things in a minute, it got released. The show got released basically 2.5 weeks ago. And in episode 1, I wasn't in episode 1 of the show. I was in episode 2 of the show. Now I'm going to jump back in my story. This is the ADHD, so stay with me, people. So I found out it was going to be released. In the meantime, in this big gap between it being released and it being made, the production company that made that show had another show. So they'd completed that show, and it was just sitting with the network channel. So it was sitting with the network channel waiting to go. All completed. They couldn't tell us who had won anything. They couldn't do anything like that. Anyway, I got a message from a producer in that company, and they said, we're putting an open casting call out for a new host for Queensland for another TV show that we do on design. And a couple of the crew and producers have said, hey, we should maybe talk to you if you're interested because you came up really well on both our shows. Now, remember, I hadn't seen the second show, but I'd seen the first one. And I'm like, okay,
Yes.
if they're happy, I'm happy.
But you didn't win the first one either. Yeah.
No, I'm going, I don't know. You didn't make me a winner. Why do I want to work with you? They don't make the winner. There's judges that do that. So anyway, with it, I went, yeah, sure. This would be a great opportunity to use the skills I've got from podcast, from right back to rest, to working in hospitality. It'd be an opportunity to use those skills, and it would be about design. So I had to give them a show reel, which I had enough video content. Like most designers these days, we're all creating video content of stuff. I had enough sort of professional video content versus just other content. And I had a great friend from Aesop Media, Hing, and he made me up a show reel. And so I flicked him the show reel, and he'd been recording me for probably 10 years, doing little things for me for work. He'd be just recording bits and pieces. And so he made me this show reel. We gave it to the production company. Production company went, great, yes, we'll give you an audition. They gave me an audition. But get this, they were fairly confident. They had 2 people who they had lined up could be the show host for the Queensland area. So they got both of us to record a show. So they sent us on location to record a show. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, exactly. And so it's game on. So I went, and did a show. And then about, I reckon it was 2 weeks later, they rang me and said, if you want the position as host, we'd like to offer it to you. That was how it came about. And now I've recorded, none of them are released yet, but I've recorded maybe 20 or 25 different homes in Queensland. I'm not big on keeping track of the actual numbers. The piece I was going to jump back to, so the dyslexic brain here, I'm going to put another piece of the jigsaw puzzle back in. Last weekend, my wife and I went to a thing called Prana Fest. And it is a festival, a lot of music, a lot of sound healing, a lot of meditation, a lot of talks that people did, a lot of yoga. And you're out in the countryside, and we're in a big fancy tent because my wife booked it. Otherwise, we'd have probably been sleeping under the stars. Thank God for my wife.
Thank God for her.
And absolutely, God, everybody needs a good wife. Even a wife needs a good wife. She doesn't get a good wife. She gets the ratbag husband. But anyway, I was there, and so no cell coverage, nothing like that. And in the morning, on the Sunday morning, so my show aired on the Saturday night here in Australia. And so I didn't see it. I didn't get to watch it or anything else. And on the Sunday morning, I got up and I went for a walk. And when I went for a walk, I took my phone with me to see if I could get any cell coverage. My wife had gone to, I don't know, some talk that was on. This was early. See if I could get any cell coverage. And I did. And all of a sudden, my WhatsApp was bing, 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 bing. And I'm like, what the hell? So I opened my WhatsApp, and my clients whose house we'd put on the show were away they're in like Spain now, I think. But they're on this world tour with they've got one child, and they went, before she gets too old and before education becomes too serious, let's take her we'll go for 6 months. We'll go for 8 months,
Oh,
so they're working while they're away as well, because they work in consulting, so they can do that. But they literally got on a cruise ship here and sailed to Africa from the cruise ship. And that was the start of their adventure. Anyway, what had happened is they couldn't watch the show either because it's on network television here. But they had friends that they'd told it was going to be on because I'd told them. They'd told friends it was going to be on. And there's this text or this message saying, oh, wow, congratulations. Here it was absolutely wonderful, blah, 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 blah. And there's something about all this, like, you did so well and all the rest. I'm like, oh, thanks. Actually, it was all up for you guys because without you guys, none of it would have happened. And then there was this other piece where she'd hinted to the fact or said something like winning something. And I'm like, what do you mean winning something? I said, the win was that we got to make you a beautiful home. And anyway, she's somewhere in Europe and we're texting each other backwards. So I'm live then, not talking, but texting backwards and forwards to her. And she said, no, you won the category in that show. And I'm like, I'm thinking she's having me on. And she's cutting and pasting messages from somebody else and putting them in there. And they're saying, the judges said all this wonderful stuff. They da-da-da-da-da. So I'm there and I go, oh, no way. I've actually won the category. So then while I had service, I checked with a couple of other people who I knew who watched it. And they were like, yeah, like you won the category, which was Aussie architecture. Let's say the production company had made that decision before they'd asked me if I would host, or before they'd offered me the opportunity to host a show. So they already knew I'd won this next one, and not the whole show, but just a piece of the show, the category in the show. So yeah, it's funny how things are in life. And it was really cool that I was in the space where we were meditating and doing sound healings and doing yoga and listening to music. And yeah, it was like all the kind of planets aligned, and we were there with our kids and stuff like that. But I want to talk to you about the wellness
and then you
thing.
can yes. So let's talk about the wellness thing. And congratulations on the award. I saw that you posted that the other day on Instagram. That is amazing. So
Yeah,
congratulations.
really cool, eh? And it was so cool because it was a surprise to me as well. Even though I expect to win, doesn't mean I always do. It's like I expect to
But
make a beautiful home
they
for my
didn't send
clients.
you, right? Of course, but they
They
didn't
didn't
send
send
you an
me
email
anything.
to be like,
No.
hey, or
Mm.
even after it came out, like, guess what? In case you
They
didn't see.
2 days later on the Monday, so it happened on the Saturday. On the Monday, I got an email from the producer of that show saying, hey, congratulations, da 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 da, you won your category, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, yeah, they probably do that for all their hosts.
Yeah.
Can't have a host that hasn't won. And then so I spoke to them and I said, so when was it decided that, because I'm like, yeah, that's a gimme, not a, I spoke to them and said, when was that decided? And they said, it was done when you'd won prior to you starting hosting with us. That show was signed, sealed, delivered in a bag, gone. I'm like, oh, okay. That made me feel a bit better. It felt like maybe it, not better, but made me feel like, okay, well, maybe I deserved it as opposed to maybe I got it from another way.
Love it.
That whole thing of being humble is maybe not that humble, but I'm curious and I'm a learner. And I love the journey of learning and discovering and working out the analytics of how things work.
How do you balance all of these things? Because you have a design business and you have TV and you have the podcast and you have a family and you have interests. How do you balance all of these things that I find as an entrepreneur we struggle because our mind is in so many, and I don't even have dyslexia or ADHD, and my mind is like all over the place all the time. How do you balance it all? How do you find balance?
Not very well.
There's some vulnerability for you, folks. There's the honest answer. Okay.
Yeah. If my wife was here, she'd be able to tell you how poorly.
No tricks coming from Adrian about that question. All righty.
I use the ADHD to be able to push myself with the time, so I can often work late and start early. I am not like what I'd call a great time manager, but every moment I have, I use it for something. There's not much time wasted. There may be stuff that's off task, but there's not stuff that's wasted. Everything, there's enough going on that, you like those things like for kids where they make fidget spinners and things like that. And you know how there's kids that are on the spectrum that they need constant movement. We don't learn by sitting down and listening. Not everybody does. We learn while we're moving and in action and doing things. We learn in a game state faster than any other state. If we can put our mental state into gamification, we learn the fastest. With that, being active, if I wasn't active, I'm in destroyer mode. So if I am not doing something that's taking me towards something that I am excited about, I'll just look around for something to disrupt. So that managing of it,
Right.
I'm not necessarily that good at. Keep it myself very busy. So podcasts are done before 8 a.m. in the morning. That's why there's very few Australians on my podcast, because they don't want to do them that early. And New Zealanders, they're okay with it. 6 a.m. is 8 a.m. So that works okay for them. Americans, Canadians, there's tons of them because they are available in their afternoon.
We're a day before you. Yeah,
a day
whole
behind,
before you.
but in the afternoon. So
Right.
that means I can talk to them between 5 a.m.
Right.
in the morning and say 8 a.m. very easily. I was at a job yesterday where about developing building for a film and television space. I've got 2 clients doing this at the moment. I think they think I know something about it because of the fact I'm on TV. I don't.
But you're going to figure it out. That's the beauty
before
of
I'm
someone
found
like you.
out. Yeah, before I'm found out, I'll figure it out. Yeah.
You'll figure it out.
Watch my podcast. You will find somebody who comes on there and talk, or more than one maybe, and talks about developing those spaces, because I will go hunting for some experts in that area, so that I've got my mind expanded and growing. So again, that thing of how do you get to figure it out? How do you get to put yourself in the right space?
Yeah. Do you listen to other people's podcasts? Do you listen to other people's
Yep.
podcasts to learn?
Yeah, 100%.
You probably don't read much. I find people with dyslexia don't
I
read a
No,
lot.
I read audiobooks, which I listen.
too.
If I really need to absorb something, though, I buy a copy of the book as well, and I listen and read at the same time and write notes physically in it at the same time, because it engages more neural pathways. Engaging more neural pathways, I'm getting the learning of it. So otherwise, the ADHD gives me like 5 paragraphs and then gone. Oh, I'm back.
Right.
Oh, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I used to read books, which was the funniest thing. I'd get a book and I'd treat it like a magazine. So here's a magazine. So I'd treat it like a magazine. A magazine, we go like this and we just flip
We look
through.
at the pictures.
Yeah, and we
look at the
find
pictures.
something and we go, damn, Santa Barbara, let's read about that. And then we go, okay, we've read about Santa. Oh, look, there's Egypt. Let's read about that. That's what we do. But try doing that with a novel or a book, and you're in for a real journey. But this is the boredom part again. I would pick up a book, everyone here, but I'd pick up a book and I would go, great, I'm going to read this book, but I'm just going to pick it up and open it. And a word or something's going to catch my eye, and I'm going to start there. So I would do that.
Wow.
So I wouldn't be learning the book or the story in a cohesive manner, but I would mark the page. And then I would start reading there, and it would just be some random thing where you dropped into the middle of a story. Just like when you walk into a conversation and you play catch up. And then I would go forward or back from there. It didn't matter. Next time I open it, I'd shift to another spot. So I'd know where I was, where I'd finished. So I'd mark that and then go to another spot. And so I'd just read it in pieces. And I don't know whether my brain ever put all those pieces together particularly well or anything, but it was a way of being able to take bite-sized bits of information. And I do it with looking at a book I've got just over there called Contagious. That book is about how to make your business propositions contagious.
That's a good one. I got to read that.
Yeah, I can't see who wrote it, but
I'm going to write that down.
You. It is Jonah Berger, Jonahberger, I think. It's across the room.
Okay.
It is a fascinating
find
book.
it.
So I read it. I've read it, but I downloaded it on Audible and listened to it. And then that book is marked up, listening and reading at the same time. So visually, I'm taking in those neural pathways because, of course, I'm highly visual. Right. Auditory, I'm better at telling people shit than I am listening to stuff. Attention span wise, great. So if I really want the information, I've got to surround myself with all the tools to do that. That's read it physically with my eyes. So visually remember. Then auditory, maybe we'll get memory. Not so good. Physically writing or drawing my node, makes another visual mind map and creates the other neural pathway that supporting that journey. And then being able to do that thing of tying each piece of it. Most books are told in stories, finding your own parallel story or the parallel story of somebody else that you know well, so that it locks that parallel story and learning in.
Right,
So
right.
I'll be
It makes
reading, I'll be reading it
tangible.
and I'll think of
Yeah.
something you've told me or some story you've told me, and your name will be in those notes with, oh, that story about da-da-da-da, all scribbled into the margins, because then it makes it tangible, it makes it real, and it locks the learning in. And then, so podcasts are done early. Design work is done generally during the day. TV is probably less than a week. It's probably about 3 days a month, maybe a little bit more. So it's just like a long weekend. You find me surfing early in the mornings. You find me exercising just about every day, or at least walking barefoot, grounded. I do my land whispering programs as part of my design process, and those are all about being grounded and listening to the land and feeling the land.
Do your clients relate to that? Do you find that you attract clients that see a value in having a designer on their team that sees the value in the land and the energy in the land and the lights and the landscape and how all that's going to flow for them for their home? Do you find you just naturally attract clients that are interested in the things you're interested in?
It's a really good
Or do you have to work,
question.
or do you have to work at it? Do you have to work at finding those people?
I don't know. It's a really, really great question.
Like some of us that are very in tune with energy and land and things. Some are like, you guys are so woo-woo.
That's a part of it. So yeah, this is a really good, as a question and, as an answer to it, the more often I put it out there, that's what I do, the more it engages people who are a bit woo-woo. So when we have clients that maybe go to work for a living and work for somebody else, they do we'll call it a job. Then we've got clients who are business owners. And in my business, 90% of my clients are business owners. Yeah, maybe
Right.
a little bit more.
Mhm.
And then we have the people that were business owners who have retired, and they've retired often young, like they might have retired in their 50s. So if I look at all my clients like that, the interesting thing is the people who are working for other people are often the least aware of the woo-woo side of it if they're my client. If they are my client, they've got a higher awareness of it. The ones who are I say the money box has got a tick in it. They've done the money journey. They know where their finance, they know where their money is at. And they've got their plans. They tend to be the most, I'd say, the dark horses. They never will come across as that they get up and meditate every morning, or that they have these ritual practices and all the rest. They never come across that way. But in the vulnerability of designing for them, and we make such an effort, or I make such an effort to really be empathetic and walk in their shoes and understand them, their life. In that, our conversations are very rarely about design. Our conversations are about life. And I suddenly will unearth the fact that they sit 20 minutes every morning. They need a space to do that. This is what supports it. This is how it happened. They do the thing where they maybe cold shower every morning as well as a hot shower. They do the thing where they lock out time for their holidays and their mental health. They eat organically because the money doesn't matter. They're not trying to eat cheaply. They're trying to eat the right way. They do these things and you realize that they live life with such a purpose. They're not living it with somebody else's purpose. They're living it with their purpose. And I find that more of my clients are like that than any other kind. They've completed parts of their journey already. They've kind of locked those things in, and now they're in that journey of very much nurturing themselves and the people around them, and that open, curious, learn. That's how they got to be where they are. They know what they want, and they don't necessarily know what they want when it comes to design, but it's like Steve Jobs, the customer's always right. The customer is always right, but they don't know what they don't know yet because we haven't invented it for them. So we don't want a focus group that tells us everything that was. We want a focus group that tells everything it could be. Coming on that journey. And when they go, say, take land whispering, and they go, I say to them, okay, cool, let's go for a walk. Take a look around. And I do that with them. And then I make a time to go back without them. And they're like, what? And I go, oh, I don't want your energy. I want my energy to understand the land. I've done analytical research on it, but now I want to feel it myself. And I want to be there before the sun comes up, especially on acreage land. I want to be there before the sun comes up. I want to see that land wake up.
You want to see the light. You want to see what happens, feel it, get in tune with that energy of it. Get fully immersed in what it is.
Yeah. And not with anybody else struggling with their journey with it or anything else. I just want the solitude of being in that. And I love to see it go to sleep as well. I love all parts of the day, but the main one would be what happens as it wakes up, what changes in it. And then the other one is what happens when it goes to sleep. If they have young kids, like little kids, let's go for a walk and take the kid, and you'll go for a walk with the kids. Yeah. Kids always find places to play, and kids are drawn to energy and curiosity. So they're always curious, and then they're drawn to energy. And the minute you're trying to control where they go or what they do, you're probably getting closer to the magic because being drawn naturally to it. So if the kids are playing in a certain spot, what's interesting about that spot? Go over there and settle your breathing. Breathe out, I say. It's not about breathing in, it's about breathing out. We're all holding our breath, waiting for some bloody thing to happen. Breathe out when you can really breathe out. And then breathe in that space and get centered with it and feel it for its energy. But take your shoes and socks off. Don't stand on an ant's nest or a thistle or something.
Do it with caution.
Okay. When you explain that to the owners, that's what you're going to do. And then you're happy to share all that with them. You're being so vulnerable and so honest with what you're doing. That's when they get their chance to be vulnerable and honest as well. And if they've never done it before, you take them with you on a journey like that. But I still like to do my own. I go, let's do some journeys like this. Let's engage in what your land has. You guys go for a walk and find those spots. I've told you what to look for. You guys go and do it. Do it separately though. Don't do it together. Then do it together and see if your energies match and align. Do it. We've got one air, one water, and one earth. So those three things, we can't replace any of them. Those three things, the closer we get to being empathetic and understanding and involved with those things, the better our lives become.
We're more in tune too.
Yeah. And then you think let yourself be in those spaces. Breathe out. Probably some of my stillest moments that I have in my life. If I'm not asleep, those are them. So I'm not doing it for my client. Don't get me wrong. I'm doing 100% for me. It's feeding me like crazy because it gives me stillness. It gives me connection to the earth. It gives me grounding. It gives me all those things. I've just worked out how to monetize that so I can make better houses for people. That's a bit cynical. Yeah, no, the truth is that you can only teach so much of it. The rest of it you have to practice. It's like design. It can be taught, but you have to practice. It is a practice. When you formalize a practice and start putting it into steps, there's a great book by Seth Godin called Shipping Work. I'd have to check. But he talks about this thing of it's an idea, it's a whatever, and then it only becomes something when you can ship it. It's only, when it's got a value to another person.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
That you've packaged it and you can ship it. That's when it's valuable. Up until then, it's just something you're doing or something that you're enjoying. That's not valuable, but make it valuable to others. You must ship the work. It must be shipped. Must happen. Must be action. So I look at things, especially from a business. What are the parameters on that? How do you package that so that maybe the ADHD mind puts some boundaries and then it goes forward. You put some boundaries and then you can go forward with it. So packaging up land whispering was like that. Packaging up emotional floor plan was like that. Packaging up my design magic process has been like that. How do I package those up and put those into things so that then they can be shipped essentially with my clients? How can I then take my clients through those processes? The great value of that shipping work.
I love
I
that.
think
So
that's
you
what it's
mentioned
called.
something. Yeah. So you mentioned something after land whispering, emotional floor plans. Can we talk about that
Yeah,
for a few moments? And then I have
of
to let you
course.
go to get to start
Okay.
your work day, I know. But I am so curious, what is an emotional floor plan if you're willing to share?
I am willing to share. So let's do it with you to start with. Let's
Or-
play some of your emotional floor plan out. Start with a really simple question, which is, in your own home, you have a space that is your favorite. It's your go-to, and it makes you feel. What emotion does your favorite space evoke in your home?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. My favorite emotional space is a reading chair that I have in my bedroom that was my grandmother's that I had reupholstered a few years ago.
Mhm.
And I sit in that chair and I meditate every morning
We've
and I
got this on
journal
my
every
podcast.
morning.
I know
And it
this.
is my go-to calm me, ground me space.
Describe that room for me, because you said it's in your bedroom. Describe that room for me in the sense of the light that comes in, the height of the ceiling, the amount of space there is in the room. Is it a big room or a little room?
It's not. I live in a New England Center Hall colonial that was built before we started having 10 and 12 and 14-foot ceilings. I'm living in a house with 8-foot ceilings, not
Oh,
12, and you put
right.
ground molding on and it brings it down even more. But I am fortunate that this room does have a lot of light and it has a lot of windows. And it is attached to the primary suite that also has a lot of light and a lot of skylights in it. So the light from the bathroom area transfers over to the bedroom. And the whole room is black and white. And for me, because that's not the same for everyone, for me, that is very clean. And my brain does not get cluttered with the color because it's very clean because it's black and white. So for me and my brain, that works for the wind down because it's just really clean. But everything I've designed. So everything is a custom piece of furniture that I've designed. So it all has meaning.
Right. With it being where it's positioned in the house, if you were to take that chair, because the chair's the favorite piece, and put it anywhere else, would you be able to ground yourself as quickly? And
No,
what,
I don't
where,
think
how do you,
so.
how do you transition from where in your home do you transition if you're going to grandma's chair?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I think what you're getting at is that the grounding comes from multiple things. It's not just the chair.
Hmm.
The chair is the object.
The chair's the
So,
hug. The
yeah,
chair's
it
the
is.
hug.
And it was interesting you say that because I was going to say the carpet is the hug. So I have the most lush, all white carpet that no one is allowed to step their foot on without socks. Like no one. I'm obsessive, but it is the most white, pure white plush carpet in my bedroom, and I love it. But
Love
I didn't get it until my daughter was old enough and until the dogs were not upstairs. But
it.
I think it's the combination. It's not the chair, it's the light in the room because the chair is sandwiched between two windows and the windows look out on my property, which is very green and very lush and very beautiful and very calming. And so it's not really the chair. The chair's an object. It's actually the space. I could probably put a different chair in that same space and have the same emotional reaction.
But then you said it was upstairs in your
It
home.
is.
So you make a
Mhm.
transition to go there because your living's on the downstairs.
Oh, yes, yes, you
So
leave the chaos
I
of everyday life to go. Yes.
and
Yeah.
the fact that there are such firm rules around the white carpet, it's a really
Yeah.
good point. It means that people respect that space.
Yes, they do.
It's also your bedroom, so it's an invited space as opposed to a public space.
Right.
If we start layering out how these things shift for you, the safety of the chair, that you're getting the hug, and that you've got all the history of your grandmother. If your grandmother was a tyrant that you hated, the chair would mean nothing. There's a history that sits in that chair, and you connecting back into that history, it shifts you emotionally. And I want the emotional word that you feel when you're in that chair? Is there one word? In that room, in that chair.
Comfort. Yeah,
Comfort.
in that room, in that chair, comfort.
And-
It's safe. It's also safe. I don't know if safe is really an emotional
Sure.
word, but
Oh, yeah.
it's a very safe space.
And private?
Oh, yeah. No one's ever there but me, but most of the time I'm there by myself when I'm on that chair. Everybody else has left for the day.
So if we
I don't
looked
do
at
my
those things,
I wait till everyone leaves the house and then I go do my journaling and meditating like after everyone's gone.
yeah, because you need some space that is controllable so that you can get the best of you and be your most vulnerable and your most connected with yourself and the world, not necessarily the world around you, but the environment you're in. So when we look at that from a emotion view, that brings out the best you. It allows you to be the person you need to be for all the other dynamic hats you have to wear during the day. If I had to design you a home, this is one tiny snippet of a journey here. If I had to design you a home, I have to find a place that you have control over. It's not anybody else's. It allows you to be really vulnerable. It's private. It has to have some journey to get you to leave the other behind. You think about how you just told me, oh yeah, it's like I get to leave all that behind. It has to have some transitional journey and it has to have a lot of light that can come into it. And you're going to actually use it in the daytime more than any other time as for that space. So then I go, okay, what does the architecture need to respond? So let's just say you wait for everybody to go in the morning or the things to be cleaned up and then you go and do it. That means that we need morning light. We need to control the heat. We need to think about the other noise that's going to be around. We need, in your case, you said, I look out into this long view into a wooded green area. That means that the distance of the view probably plays into you having vision and serenity and not being caught in that room only. The breathe out space, you can see the vision, you can imagine the future. You're not got a wall in front of you, you're not contained. It's giving you those things. So we need to design you a space. The fact that it is your bedroom probably adds a massive another journey about you protecting yourself personally and that feeling of safety, because it's your bedroom. It's not just anybody's bedroom. It's not just a living room. It's not just a back porch. So in this house that I'm going to design for you, I would play around with the form and the height of the ceilings as well. But the lowest ceiling might be creating a lot of intimacy for you that makes you feel more hugged than expansiveness. So we play for some games in that. I have comfort, safe, and private as emotional drivers that you're looking for. I know that there's vulnerability in there and some other ones. We would create in then positioning that room, we need this natural light. We need it to fall a certain way. We need it to light up something outside that gives us vision. We need the windows to be positioned in a certain way so that those spaces exist. We don't have to necessarily have grandma's chair, but we need a space that will create all those feelings. And it could be a window seat. It could be a bench. It's unlikely to be a bed because it's not going to necessarily be a totally lying down space because you want to journal and those things. It's got to have a level of comfort. A window seat may not work, and we'd explore this based on the fact that you might feel too vulnerable being right against the glass, as opposed to the privacy aspect may draw back.
Sure.
As opposed to push forward. So now the architecture is responding to your emotion. And we do that through a whole home with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Just weeks and weeks of stuff.
It is. But we set you up on a path of doing it by words first. And then from words, we dig into those words. And then we dig into forms that support that. And when we can dig into forms that support it, we then go, this one makes you feel like another question, when do you feel your biggest, most powerful and strongest, like that you can take on anything? It's not about being calm, it's the warrior in you. When's the warrior come out?
It's always right after I meditate in that chair. Always. Always. start the day with strength. And then it might go
Yeah.
downhill from there, but you start the
Sure.
day with strength.
Start out the way you mean to go on. So once you've had that,
That's exactly it. You start out the day as your best version of you and see what happens.
and then if you're working at least from that, you've got a chance of getting all the way. There's a
Exactly.
transition that you take after you've been in there, because you've now settled all the demons, you've breathed them through them, you've put yourself in a position. I don't know whether you've eaten before it or whether you eat after it or what your eating habits are, but we'd discover those. And then we would go, okay, you've now very gently put on your superwoman out. That's
Right.
what you've done, but you've
Yeah.
done it gently.
Yeah.
You didn't rush.
Right. Yes.
You just gently put it on. And you're a beautiful, gentle person in the sense that you're not like going to force people to do things. You're on the journey with things. You're working in flow and in harmony. That's why we enjoy each other so much, because it's
Right.
about trying to, the minute you're feeling that it's forced, there's a point when you react and go, man, I'm pushing too hard for
Right.
this
Yeah.
to
No, then it's
I
yeah.
recenter.
Right.
And so that is how we create
Right.
an emotional floor
When
plan.
you want your love.
It's that.
That was
Yeah.
oh
Sorry.
my goodness. It's okay. No, it's
So
fine. You have a work day ahead.
This
You
is
need
one
to-
of those, I
Well,
do.
Yeah,
That
so where are
if
you?
we can
Hello.
create,
Good morning.
yeah, it was. If we can create an
I
emotional
know.
floor plan for everybody that we design for, and when we start doing it with furnishings and textures and your room being black and white and reducing the amount of clutter that you see, knowing that it's really monochromatic in the fact that it's easy to understand and it's curated so it doesn't force you in some way. If you can do that for every home you design, you're engaging the inner soul of that person that's going to live in there, and you're lifting them one step higher every day into being a better version of them. And that means they're a better version of them for all the other things. You can't give what you don't have. And if you
Right.
filled your cup,
Yeah.
you can liberally give from that cup. It's yours to give from. But if yours is empty, everywhere else you go is empty as well. It's a setup
Amazing.
that changes.
And that's an incredible gift. And that's a gift that you
Yeah.
can give to your clients, because our ability to see spaces and design spaces, because you're like me, most designers, we see it in our head before,
see it.
and half the battle is getting what's out of our head into something our clients can visually see and touch before they can see and touch in real life. So we give them a gift in that sense, and we push them beyond what they think is possible. But being able to really elevate their emotions and how they live in their homes is also just takes the gift to one big step
Just
higher.
one bit
So,
step further. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
playing
Oh,
with me
you're
with
so
that.
fascinating. That was so great. You are so fabulous. So I know I need to let you go. Is there anything that you want our audience to know? How do they find you? Anything coming up that is noteworthy that we need to make sure we include in the notes?
Yeah, actually there is. That would be really cool. One of the things that I am doing, I started these before COVID and then closed them down obviously with COVID, and starting them again is, I call them Archi Adventures. I came up with that name because it was like architectural adventures. They're really design adventures. I am going to be running a design adventure, and it's a pretty tame kind of adventure, this one, in Austin, Texas, in the end of October. We're going to have around 20 guests, 18 to 20 guests, and we're going to just be in the Austin area. The AIA Austin has their open homes tour, and they'll be showing 9 or 10 homes. And I have the pleasure of being a sponsor of that homes tour with the Talk Design podcast. And this year on the Wednesday before it, so it's held over the weekend, I think it's the last weekend of October, we are going to do a tour where we're going to go to start on the Wednesday evening. Then Thursday, I've lined up an amazing interior designer, certainly one of the best that I've ever come across. And she is going to take us on a little journey of interior design for the morning. And then another beyond inspiring human being, I don't want to release their names yet, but a beyond inspiring human being architect who was in Sydney recently. He's from Austin, who was in Sydney recently for the first ever South by Southwest that was run out of America, out of the US. They run it in Sydney, Australia now. And South by Southwest brought him out to speak there. He's going to do us a city walk and planning walk and understanding how a city's done and created. And then we're going to have drink and dinner with him as well. And then on the next morning, we're going to go and see one of the most innovative build companies in the world, which again is based in Austin. And we're going to be spoken to by one of their head people, and then also taken on some touring of this technology being operated. Then we're going to go and play in the afternoon and have some, it'll be Friday afternoon. We'll regroup for dinner. We'll regroup for some barbecue and some music and things like that. And then the next on the Saturday morning, we'll be in transportation and headed to the first house. And then we will explore these houses together as part of the AIA Open Homes Tour. And then we'll regroup that evening and our tour piece or do dinner, etc. And then we'll all be doing those houses together. If it's too much for some people, they just get an Uber to the next one. They just go to where they want to go and we'll meet them there. We'll have a time zone.
Yeah.
And then we do the same on Sunday, and then there'll be a party on the Sunday night for all the VIPs that go on that tour. Not on my tour, but on the Open Homes Tour, there'll be, because all my people will be VIP ticket. And I'm doing it with a co-host who most of your listeners, or not listeners, but your design friends probably follow on Instagram. And I'll announce that as well, but I won't say who it is yet, but has a most incredible following. He's from Australia and he's going to come and co-host with me. And we'll wrap it up on the Sunday night, and there's going to be a little bonus tour that happens later in that following week as well. But we'll announce that and I'll send it through to you, and I'll send you the details. And it'll be about 18 to 20 people.
Please do. That sounds like my kind of event.
It'll be a lot of fun and real learning event as well. I know some of the people who are coming already, and we haven't even gone out and announced it fully, but they've already got bookings on it. And they, again, inspired designers who just see the gift of learning and educating as being, all it does is make the world around them and then their clients that they give it to better. And so I'm there, I'll be there 100% full passion to dig in. And I want to learn from everybody who's on the tour, as well as I want to learn from the tour myself. And I want to I want to go on the curiosity journey hand in hand with the people that want to come on a curiosity journey. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So please send me the information, because
I will. It'll be launched very soon. We're just finalizing details now. There'll be some great food as well. Trust me.
Okay, good.
So thanks for that opportunity.
Austin has great food. They have great music and also great art too, and great architecture. You're welcome. It's been such a pleasure. Every time I talk to you, I could talk to you for hours, and you are just you are a special human. So thank you for your time. And I know my audience will love hearing from you. And this is not the last time you'll be on the show, because I'll have you back. No. You always have new stuff going on. Yeah, you've got to come back on mine. You always have new stuff going on, and we could talk for hours. So thank you so much, and thank you for your morning. And I hope you have a wonderful, blessed day.
I hope you do too, and thank you.
Thank you.
The pleasure was all mine. Big love.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the House of JerMar podcast, where wellness starts within. We appreciate you being a part of our community and hope you felt inspired and motivated by our guest. If you enjoyed this episode, please write us a review and share it with friends. Building our reach on YouTube and Apple Podcasts will help us get closer to our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. You can also follow us on Instagram at House of JerMar. and sign up to be a part of our monthly inspiration newsletter through our website, houseofjermar.com. If you or someone you know would be a good guest on the show, please reach out to us at podcast@houseofjermar.com. This has been a House of JerMar production with your host, Jean Collins. Thank you for joining our house.